Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really interesting set of source materials today, a whole stack of committee reports about collaboration between Sonora and Arizona.
Yeah, it's quite a collection. And honestly, the range of topics they're covering together is pretty extensive.
It really is. You've got education, health, infrastructure, environment, economic development. I mean, it just goes on.
It paints a picture of, well, just how tied together these two states are, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So our mission for this deep dive is basically to unpack all of this. We want to get a handle on what these joint efforts really look like on the ground.
Right. Understand the strategies, the plans, and figure out what it all means for the region and maybe, what lessons others could learn.
Exactly. Okay, so where should we start? How about the Inter-University Alliance? That seems like a good foundational piece.
Sounds good. What jumps out immediately is this idea of strategic alliances, not just for new research, but for recovering existing knowledge.
Recovering knowledge. What do they mean by that?
Well, it seems like they want to take research findings that might be sitting on a shelf, so to speak, and actually apply them to solve real regional problems.
Ah, okay. Making research more practical, more impactful.
Precisely. And the reports specifically mention a new Sonora-Arizona alliance focused on doing just that. Plus, it could attract more funding, more talent.
Makes sense. And it looks like it's not just high-level research either. There's a lot here about bilingual professional development.
Yes, definitely. The University of Sonora, University of Arizona, ASU, they're offering joint courses.
And it says they're documenting the processes carefully.
Yeah, like they're trying to build a sustainable model, something repeatable for developing that bilingual workforce, which is, crucial for the region.
Okay, and what's this COI system? COI.
Right, COI, that stands for Collaborative Online International Learning. It's basically a way to get students and faculty interacting online before any physical exchange or visit happens.
So it's like pre-collaboration, breaking the ice digitally.
Exactly. It makes those in-person exchanges, potentially more meaningful and maybe less daunting. Gets people motivated.
And it's quite widespread. 11 Sonoran universities and the big three in Arizona.
Yep. UA, ASU, NAU. It shows a real commitment to using tech to bridge the border for education.
That's pretty forward thinking. I also see something about cultural exchanges, specifically with indigenous groups.
Yeah, that's important too. They're actively working to strengthen those cultural ties. There's an event mentioned coming up at the Technological University of Nogales.
So it's a really holistic approach, academic, professional, cultural.
It seems so. And then there's the alliance with Maricopa Community Colleges focusing on knowledge transfer in very specific strategic areas.
Like what?
Things like semiconductor conductors, water management, language skills, even AI. Stuff the regional economy really needs.
That's very targeted. And expanding the overall Alliance for Transborder Strategic Studies,
Right.
focusing on common research, lab exchanges.
Right, involving universities, banks, research institutions. It's about creating that cross-pollination of ideas across the border. It could be really powerful.
Okay, let's shift gears. What about the Health Committee? What are the key takeaways there?
Well, the Health Committee seems very focused on practical, shared health issues. Makes sense given how much people move back and forth.
And they've broken it down into three main areas.
That's right. First, nursing professionals. Second, other health science fields, things like student mobility and practicing across the border. And third, disease protocols, like for epidemiology.
Okay, let's take nursing first. Leadership training.
Yeah, they mentioned Arizona specifically needs more healthcare leadership, so they're looking at training programs.
And also reviewing migration and work criteria. How does that fit?
Well, it's about making sure the training people get, say in Sonora, actually lines up with what's needed for certification and work in Arizona and vice versa. It's about relevance and compatibility.
Smoothing the path for qualified professionals.
Exactly. And that connects to the second point, making it easier for health science students generally to move between the states for learning, maybe even finding work eventually, Right. Building a more integrated healthcare workforce.
Right, a regional workforce almost.
Kind of, yeah. And the third area, those binational disease protocols, that's just critical, isn't it?
Absolutely, especially for things that spread easily.
Right. They're reviewing and updating protocols for vaccine-preventable diseases like measles, pertussis, but also things like dengue, TB, HIV.
So it's about timely identification, coordinated community action.
And making sure treatment continues smoothly, even if someone crosses the border while they're sick. It's about protecting everyone.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's move on to Infrastructure and logistics. This sounds like where things get very concrete.
They certainly do. You've got public and private sector folks coordinating from both sides, which is a good sign.
And a big focus seems to be this LUPI corridor.
Yes, LUPI Libre y Unido Puerto Peñasco. It's a safe corridor initiative, basically aiming to make travel for tourists, especially foreign visitors, feel safer and smoother going down to Puerto Peñasco.
And civil protection is involved?
Yeah, Sonora's Secretary of Public Security is mentioned. They're actively working on the ground within that corridor. The reports say it's genuinely boosting tourist confidence in the Sonoy to Peñasco stretch.
That's a tangible benefit right there.
Definitely. And look at this tech collaboration working with Arizona's DOT or EIDOT through the AZ511 system.
The traffic app, how does that work cross-border?
Sonora's Civil Protection is actually uploading real-time road information, accidents, construction delays onto the Arizona system.
Oh, wow. So travelers planning a trip from Arizona can see conditions in Sonora before they even cross.
Exactly. It directly helps tourists, improves their perception of the trip. They even credit it partly for the smooth spring break period in Peñasco, the white balance, they call it.
That's really smart. What else on infrastructure? Looks like a lot of work at customs points.
Yeah, ongoing efforts in San Luis Rio, Colorado, Nogales. There's a mention of a Contini study coming up there, Sonoida, Douglas, Agua Prieta.
So coordinating with federal agencies, because that must be complex.
Extremely. Planning, funding, construction for border infrastructure requires that federal cooperation. It's a constant focus.
And they mentioned the AZ511 app, again, specifically for the Zabalita to Puerto Peñasco route.
Reinforces how useful it is. Plus, there's a push for dedicated work groups for specific projects, like in Sonoida and the Mariposa Crossing in Nogales.
And using tech to measure wait times.
Right, for transparency, so travelers actually know what to expect. It's all about improving that border crossing experience.
Okay, environment and water. What's the focus there?
4 main action areas are listed: waste management and wildlife protection, improving the water utility operations in
Naco, right on the border.
Exactly. Then there's a strategy for the San Pedro River, which flows across the border. And finally, a public notification plan for environmental emergencies.
It sounds quite comprehensive.
What's key here, I think, is the emphasis on defining implementable actions for the next 3 years. Not just talk, but concrete steps.
With measurable goals.
Yes, aligned with Sonora's Environmental Agency, SEEDS, and their Water Commission, CEA. And Arizona is doing parallel work through their agencies, DWR and DEQ.
So, coordinated annual plans on both sides.
Seems like it. And they also stress public participation, using environmental education to get communities involved on both sides of the river, building that long-term stewardship.
Good. Okay, let's pivot to economic development and global promotion. It's like a mixed bag here. Film industry.
Yeah, they're looking into it. Interesting point here. Arizona apparently has an inventory of medical industry equipment, but they need to investigate Sonora's capabilities.
So potential for synergy there, maybe using Arizona equipment in Sonoran facilities?
Possibly. They mentioned someone named Matthew making contacts and a planned familiarization trip to Sonora, so exploring possibilities.
And they mentioned opportunities in San Carlos and the Alamos Film Festival already exist.
Right, building on existing strengths.
Yeah.
And this idea is ambitious, sending a joint Sonora-Arizona film delegation to L.A.
To do what?
To try and attract some of the investment Netflix is putting into Mexico, specifically trying to lure some of that to Sonora.
It's thinking big.
Definitely. Then there's the more traditional focus on manufacturing in the vegetable sector through the Economic Development Center, planning an industry congress.
Involving both states, talking about jobs.
Right. And using events like the Aesthetic West Seminar in San Francisco for networking and info exchange.
And what's this Treasures initiative?
Sounds like a program to promote the exchange of local products between Arizona and Sonora, like artisan goods, food products, that kind of thing. A grassroots economic link.
Nice. Okay, agriculture. Tomatoes and livestock seem prominent.
They are. The 2 main action plans mentioned deal with the suspended tomato agreement and electronic ID tags for cattle.
The tomato agreement suspension was a big deal. What are they doing?
Working jointly with Arizona, specifically requesting that certified Mexican inspectors, Senasica-certified vets, be stationed closer to the actual inspection points, like Agua Prieta and Nogales, to speed things up.
Makes sense. And the electronic ID tags for livestock.
Yeah, they want to implement these electronic ear tags. They've got Arizona's support to kind of lobby the USDA on this.
Why is Arizona involved in lobbying the USDA for Mexico?
Well, It benefits the whole cross-border cattle trade, which is important for Arizona ranchers too. Traceability, animal health, it's seen as a national interest for both sides. They're planning a meeting with Sinosica.
Okay. And reducing quarantine for imported breeding stock.
Right. They want to shorten or eliminate that quarantine period for high-quality breeders coming from Arizona into Sonora, or vice versa, presumably. Again, Arizona is helping push for a meeting with USDA and Sinosica to discuss it.
Seems like a lot of navigating regulations.
That's the nature of cross-border agriculture. They even mentioned getting support from an agriculture workshop in Spain Sheldon to help speed up processes.
Interesting. And quickly, citrus surveillance.
Yeah, monitoring for citrus diseases, not currently in Mexico itself, it seems, but they're watching cypress trees in Arizona. And also trying to get Sonora recognized as free of the LIGO fly, which would help a major project.
Okay, lots happening in ag. What about that lithium committee? That's a hot topic globally.
It is. Two main activities highlighted here. First, they held a webinar to encourage investment in lithium, not just extraction, but all phases, including recycling. They featured a battery recycling company called Lifecycle.
So looking at the whole supply chain.
Exactly. And second, just generally discussing the state of lithium in Mexico, trying to pinpoint the economic opportunities, whether it's extraction, processing, adding value.
Finding where the investment potential really lies.
Right. And related to energy, though maybe not strictly lithium, there's another webinar coming up soon, April 25th, apparently,
About what?
organized by several Arizona committees, transport, tourism, energy. It's about mapping out electric vehicle charging stations on the routes to San Carlos and Puerto Penasco.
Ah, directly supporting tourism again? Making it easier for EV drivers?
Yep. And future plans include looking into electrical grid interconnection between Sonora and Arizona, sharing info on things like agrivoltaics, combining solar panels and agriculture, and supporting Sonoran energy trade missions to Arizona.
Very future-focused. Now, the Root Goods Committee, that's an interesting name. What's that about?
It seems to be about real estate, basically. Property rights, investment conditions.
Okay. And who's involved?
Sonora's Cadastral Institute, their land registry folks, and Arizona's Department of Justice. Real estate, presumably, though says human rights here, which might be a slight misstatement or focus on fair housing aspects. They're analyzing regulations in both states.
Why? What's the goal?
To create clear guides. Guides for Sonorans investing in Arizona property and for Arizonans investing or buying in Sonora, especially in the municipalities.
So, making cross-border real estate deals less confusing, more secure.
That's the idea. And generally improving the conditions for construction projects, hoping that clearer rules will encourage more investment.
Makes sense. Okay, Tourism Committee. We've touched on this already, but what's their main thrust?
Well, they really hammer home how vital tourism is for the regional economy and just for keeping that Sonora-Arizona relationship strong, even with, political winds that might blow sometimes.
So, focusing on the positive connection.
Absolutely. A big push is on connectivity, making it easier to get from Arizona to places like San Carlos and Puerto Penasco. They're even looking into potential charter airline services.
That would be a significant step. Require state support, though, I imagine.
No doubt. And we mentioned the EV charging infrastructure collaboration with the Energy Committee. They stress the need for consistent standards, so you don't have different plugs or payment systems everywhere.
Right, seamless charging. What else?
This is neat. A plan for a binational exchange of certified tourist guides and operators.
How would that work?
The idea is to get Arizona guides familiar with Sonora and vice versa, especially targeting newer Arizona residents who might not know much about Sonora. It helps address safety concerns directly by using trusted guides and promoting those safe corridors.
That's clever, building familiarity and trust.
Exactly. And they mentioned gastronomy exchange. Apparently the Sonoran hot dog is huge in Tucson. Who knew?
Ah,
Culinary diplomacy.
pretty much. There's also ongoing talk about expanding global entry access and maybe a fair in San Luis, Arizona, bringing state officials and business folks together.
And joint marketing efforts.
Yeah, leveraging Sonora's attractions, the culture, the pride of the people, and Arizona promoting its neighbor. It's a symbiotic marketing relationship they're aiming for.
Okay, nearly there. Last one. The Emergency Administration Committee. Sounds pretty crucial.
Absolutely crucial. Their work really underpins a lot of the other committees' effectiveness. If things go wrong, you need a plan.
And they've made good progress. 2 out of 3 action plans done. That's what it says. Focused on preparedness and response with that vital cross-border coordination.
So Action Plan 1 was about identifying threats.
Yes, systematically identifying potential binational threats all along the border, figuring out the likely impacts.
What kind of threats came out on top?
The top 5 listed are flooding, strong winds, and heavy rain, wildfires, pandemics, COVID is specifically mentioned, and drought.
That covers a lot of major risks for this region.
It does. And they also list other potential issues like sewer collapses, heat waves, agricultural disease outbreaks. This whole process apparently led to updating their action protocols.
Good. And Action Plan 2, that one's completed too.
Yes. This was about setting up communication channels. Reliable, bidirectional 204/7 communication between Arizona's emergency management and Sonora's civil protection.
How does that work in practice?
They mentioned a telephone information system that everyone in Sonora can access, including tourists, plus the standard 911 number and having integrated response teams ready to go.
So getting the word out quickly and reliably.
Exactly. The report stresses how critical information and time are in any emergency, getting the right info to the right people fast across the border.
Absolutely vital work. Okay, so wrapping this all up.
Well, what we've seen across all these reports is, I think, a really impressive level of detailed strategic collaboration. It's not just talk. They have concrete plans across so many different areas.
Yeah, from universities to roads to health to even lithium and real estate. It's incredibly broad, but also seems quite focused within each committee.
And hopefully for you, listening, this deep dive has given you a good, clear picture of these binational efforts without getting totally lost in the weeds.
Right. We've tried to pull out the key insights. When you step back, it really highlights how interconnected places like Sonora and Arizona are.
Absolutely. Their economies, their environments, their people, they're deeply linked.
And these reports show very deliberate, proactive steps being taken to manage that connection, foster growth, and tackle shared problems together right across an international border.
It's quite a model, potentially.
It really makes you think, what other border regions or even just neighboring communities with shared challenges could benefit from this kind of structured, intensive collaboration? Something to chew on.